Hello and welcome to Uncommon Law, my podcast about true stories from my life experience of over 50 years as a lawyer and trial judge. This is a look at the law from the inside out, stuff they don't teach in law school. This is Judge Rudy Greco, retired justice of the New York State Supreme Court. Mickey Earl called me in the mid-'80s with a business proposition. We'd been friends since our first day at St. John's University, when both of us bored walked out of simultaneously. We didn't know each other, but we both at the same time walked out of freshman orientation outside the building to light up a smoke. Well, I think I borrowed a match from Mickey, or he borrowed a match from me, and that was the beginning of a long, long friendship. Mickey and I were best friends throughout college. He eventually would graduate with a bachelor's degree in English, and I got one in political science. And it all began when both of us stepped out for those cigarettes. We struck up a conversation, and the conversation and friendship never ended until Mickey died at age 52, many, many years later, prematurely from breast cancer. From the start, we hit it off. We had a lot of things in common. Mickey grew up on the Irish docks, the West Side in Hell's Kitchen. I grew up on the Italian docks in South Brooklyn, Red Hook. Mickey loved music. I loved music. We both smoked. Mickey and I were both first in our families to go to college, and we both had, it turns out, lots of experience as street fighters. Apparently, we were both angry teens. Mickey became an excellent drummer in a rock band called The Illusion. And the four members, including Charlie on the lead guitar, Tony on the rhythm guitar, and Jack on bass guitar, practiced in the basement of a one-family frame house in Queens Village, where Mickey's mom, Helen, a widow, moved the family away from the tumultuous streets of the West Side. Apparently, Mickey's father died when Mickey was 2 or 3 years old. He died violently and suddenly. And the mother wanted to get away from the neighborhood, so she picked up Mickey and his beautiful sister's young sister, and his wonderful granny, who was one of the slightest and skinniest women I've ever met in my life. It was just a delightful old Irish woman, and they rounded out the whole house. Helen indulged Mickey's noisy drumming because it gave him structure and kept him off the streets. Mickey's fast hands made him a very good drummer, and it also made him the toughest kid in Queens Village. Eventually, he fought the toughest kid in the next neighborhood, Cambria Heights, a guy named Bobby Riley. Mickey lost the fight when, at the beginning, he tried to take his jacket off, and he got it halfway off, and Bobby Riley cold-cocked him and knocked him down and jumped on him, and that was the end. But ironically, Mickey and Bobby became close friends after that. And Bobby entered St. John's on a full athletic scholarship because he was the best high jumper in the country at Bishop Loughlin High School in Brooklyn. The three of us played intramural football. We started an intramural football team called the W.C. Fields Memorial Football Club. He said, and this was a collection of misfits from Brooklyn, Queens, and Manhattan. We had Bobby was on the team, Mickey was on the team. Our quarterback was actually a wealthy kid from Douglaston, Queens, which is a pretty Tony neighborhood, called Mike Begley. And Mike was in St. John's on a tennis scholarship, and he was our quarterback. And he used to quarterback with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth, in the intramural games, which was really something. Mike was a character. He was also, in the summertime, he's a superb athlete, and he was a lifeguard at Jones Beach, which is not an easy job to get. The qualification is pretty tough. When Mike's father passed away, he was on the front page of the New York Times with a big obituary. Mike's father was head of security for the United Nations, all their peacekeeping forces. And he was famous, I guess this is where Mike got it from, I don't know. He was famous, Mr. Begley was famous for walking upright in every armed conflict. The guy never ducked once in his life and never got hit. I don't know. And Mike was that kind of a guy as well. Well, anyway, we went all the way to the finals, and we lost to the big athletic fraternity, all the varsity athletes. And I think the referees, who were all the coaches of the teams, were leaning the other way. They didn't like us at all. We were ragamuffin crew. Anyway, Bobby had an interesting life, if you can call it that. His father was a police captain. Bobby, unfortunately, threw away his whole scholarship and everything. He got heavily involved in drugs and died from an overdose eventually. Before he died, Bobby dabbled in armed robbery. He would go down Queens Boulevard in the different motels and stick them up repeatedly to the extent where they recognized him coming. And when the desk clerks saw Bobby Riley coming, they'd start stuffing their pockets with money so he couldn't steal it, and they could. God bless New York. Everybody's got an angle. But poor Bobby passed away, and that was the end of that. Well, back to the band. Well, the Illusion became an excellent cover band during the English invasion of the Stones and the Beatles and the Dave Clark Five, etc., etc. The guys are really, really good. And as the unofficial manager of the band, I got them a steady gig at the World's Fair as the house band at the Bistro. The Bistro was a little corner bar and cafe on the corner of Bourbon Street, which was the New Orleans Pavilion, which was right alongside a footbridge, a big footbridge, which led from one side of the Long Island Expressway to the other side. And on our side, right adjoining Bourbon Street, were the Vatican Pavilion and the Belgian Village and the New York State Pavilion, all big, big draws. The Bistro was open air and with wrought iron fencing that you could see through and everything. And the crowds would gather on the bridges by the thousands to listen to the guys. And obviously playing 5 nights a week for 2 years, for 2 seasons from April through October at the World's Fair, they got very, very good. The band members went on in life with varying degrees of success. Charlie became a college professor and a leading author in child psychology. Tony, the rhythm guitar player, went on to a career in the U.S. Postal Service. And Jack, the bass player, went on to form his own group called J.F. Murphy and Free Flowing Salts. And they recorded 2 albums, rock albums, that were very, very good, including featuring a bagpipe with the rock band. They went on, they played a lot of gigs at Fillmore East, and they went on to open the world tour for Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention on the world tour. They were really, really good. Jack stayed in the music business. He became an executive, and later on in life, he wrote the music and the lyrics to a Broadway musical, The Civil War, which had some limited success. Mickey himself became a recording engineer, and he worked with the Young Rascals and Janis Joplin and Big Brother and the Holding Company, etc., etc. When he had called, 20 years thereafter, he was a bar owner. He was tending bar in his own establishment in Floral Park, New York. Mickey explained that he had a chance to manage a rock band called Bagatelle, which was a national success in Ireland. They were looking to expand their market to the United States, where there were thousands of Irish immigrants in pockets around the country who were long established and loyal fans. They contacted Steve Duggan, who ran Paddy Riley's Pub. Paddy Riley was his partner, who was a famous Irish singer, popular singer. And the pub was on East 29th Street in Manhattan, 2nd Avenue. And it was a big venue for Irish music, rock, folk, punk. Everybody in Irish circles knew about Paddy Riley's Pub. Steve called, and he needed a partner to help manage the traveling band because he couldn't travel that much, being tied down with the pub. Mickey called me in turn because Mickey needed a lawyer to help with the band contracts and the bookings. And the result was Mickey came up with the name 3T Management, which he said stood for talent, tenacity, and timing. It should have been temperament, trials, and tribulations, but who knew? But anyway, Bagatelle was led by a singer-songwriter who played keyboards. His name was Liam Riley. Liam was in his childhood the button accordion champion of Ireland, and he was the preeminent creative force in the band. John O'Brien was a very talented lead guitarist who was born and raised in Bray, a seaside town near Dublin, and his neighbor and childhood friend, lifetime friend, was Bono of U2. And U2 and Bagatelle were the best bands in Ireland at the time. Everybody knew them, and there was a big, big difference in the outcomes, which we'll talk about shortly. But the band was rounded out by Ken Doyle, who was a jovial guy, funny as could be. He could have been a stand-up comic. And this cantankerous, wired drummer, Wally McConville. Both of them, all of the guys would chip in every once in a while or pitch in and back up Liam's vocals and occasionally even sing lead on a song or two. But Liam was the main creative force of the band. The band worked very, very hard and tightened up their act. They played gigs all over Ireland constantly, and their gigs kept going to bigger and better places. They recorded a hit song by Liam called Summer in Dublin, which was a breakthrough. Platinum hit there. Many more hits followed on Irish charts, which led to better gigs across Ireland. Liam wrote most of the songs, and He wrote two songs that he never recorded until much later in life at my suggestion. But the two songs were big hits by three other famous Irish artists, and they were The Streets of New York and The Flight of Earls, which became standards. You could hear them even today in any Irish bar around the world. They'll have them on the jukebox or available, or you'll hear them on a sound system. You'll hear those songs. And they're even played on with traditional Irish hits on all Aer Lingus flights. Anyway, Bagatelle should have been world famous in the widest sense, but they were held back by a couple of factors. First, they were self-managed, and two of the members of the group were married. John, the lead guitarist, and Wally, the drummer. They were married with children, and that held the group back because they were reluctant to travel and to take chances. They were making excellent livings at the best gigs in Ireland. They had all the best places and they had a ready, steady circuit to go to. It was like having a government job for them. It was steady pay, and they never had to travel far because Ireland's not that big. Even when you're in the farthest reaches of one end of Ireland from the other, it's not that far away. You're always within reach of your family should anything arise. So they never wanted to really expand. Whereas U2 had a swashbuckling manager, and he took chances. He kept booking them in bigger and bigger venues until it culminated in their filling stadiums around the world, and they deserved it. I assure you, they were no better than Bagatelle, but they were better managed than Bagatelle, and it showed. Well, these guys in Bagatelle stayed comfortably close, but that brought tension all the time because Liam himself was a confirmed bachelor, and he just wanted big time success, and he was after it, and he really deserved it with the talent that he had. Another problem they had, but that not an insurmountable one, a good manager would work around it, was Liam's voice was remarkably close to that of Elton John. And record people would say, well, who needs another Elton John? We have one already. But that could be worked out if they had a capable manager. When we at 3T took over management of Bagatelle, it was at a time when the original problems were festering for years. The band was here in the U.S. They had booked a tour for themselves. They call it the Orange Sweater Circuit. There are a lot of Irish immigrants and Irish Americans in New York, Boston, Chicago, and even Savannah, Georgia, which I found out has the second largest St. Patrick's Day celebration in the U.S., right behind New York's. Irish bands would come over to America to profit from club and concert dates during what they call the St. Patrick's season, which was before and after St. Patrick's Day, around March 17th, capitalizing on the large Irish population and the large audience for their music, and everybody knew. Touring with the guys, we went on a tour with the guys on this haphazard tour. It was like a cross between Keystone Cops and a soap opera. It was sloppy booking, inattention to detail. Every gig was an adventure, and some of these places were really rough. And some of the club owners and concert hall people were also not the most legitimate guys in the world. And every time getting paid was a struggle, and that was mostly my job. It was a struggle, and not surprisingly, fights would break out at some of these venues. And Steve Duggan, in a classic, the Irish have a way with words. There would be a major, heavy brawl going on, and Steve would hit me with his elbow and go, "Oh, there's a bit of a handling here." Yeah, there was a bit of a handling. It would look like World War II out there. Guys breaking bottles over their heads. But anyway, we had a lot of laughs, and the fun was terrific and plenty. But the stress among the guys was never far beneath the surface. We did have a couple of good successes. Mickey came up with the idea of offering a charity concert to benefit police officer Stephen McDonald, who was tragically paralyzed from the neck down when a young bicycle thief in Central Park that he had apprehended pulled a pistol by surprise and shot him through the neck. Well, we went and I drew up a proposal which included Bagatelle and numerous professional boxing champions that I had known and represented at Gleason's Gym and some local Irish notables. The idea grew into a giant benefit at the then brand new Javits Center in Manhattan. The final program was honorably co-chaired by the actress Maureen O'Hara and New York Mets owner Fred Wilpon. The entertainment that night consisted of 8 bands with Bagatelle headlining. One of the other bands included the NYPD's enormous Emerald Society pipes and drums. Mayor Koch was there. Cardinal O'Connor was there. A dozen boxing champions showed up at my request, and a group of famous New York radio DJs, about 7 or 8 of them, also showed up and emceed the show in stages. 10,000 people showed up that night, and the event was a magical night in every way. We were blessed. We raised over $300,000 that night, and almost 200,000 more indirectly. The money went to a house that we retrofitted in Malvern in Nassau County for Stephen and his needs as a quadriplegic. And Stephen lived in that house with his wife, Patty Ann, and his son, Connor. And Patty Ann became the mayor of Malvern, in fact, over the years. And Stephen lived there for 32 happy years until he passed away prematurely. But the whole thing was a raging success. And to show their gratitude, one of the guys from the Police Benevolent Association was a Manhattan North trustee, an ex-Marine called Eddie Mahoney. And Eddie was a sweetheart, one of a kind, and he's still around, a dear, dear guy. And Eddie arranged, out of gratitude for Bagatelle and what we did, and Mickey and I lighting the match for the whole concert, as it were, he arranged for the boys to take a helicopter ride with the police helicopter. And the police helicopter took them around New York City. They went up to Yankee Stadium and dipped right into the stadium. They went to the Brooklyn Bridge and swooped under the bridge. They went to the World Trade Center, which was still in existence at that time. And like an elevator, the pilot went right up the side of the building like it was an elevator. When the pilot dropped them off at Battery Park, they came out like babbling kids that just took their first roller coaster ride. These guys were jaded guys. They had been all over the place. They loved it. It was fantastic, but it wasn't over. At Battery Park, they were taken by a police escort right to the waterfront right there and put on the Harbor Patrol boat, which took them around the harbor for a harbor tour of New York City. It was really, really, really good. It was something they never forgot for the rest of their lives. The other success was when Bagatelle headlined a weekend-long outdoor concert on the steps of the Bank of Ireland national headquarters in Dublin, right across a crowded Times Square-like thoroughfare from Trinity College in the center of Dublin. Well, it was called the Dublin Millennial Celebration, and this was the highlight of a whole year of, worth of events. And Bagatelle were the headliners of the thing. Of course, their song "Summer in Dublin" was the anthem of the whole proposition. And there was a wooden stage that the authorities had erected, but it was built without a cover or a top or a roof, which is crazy in Ireland where it rains every 20 minutes or so, on and off. And when I approached the civil service people who did all of this stuff, I said, "Wait, no top." And they looked at me, blank. I said, "It rains here all the time. What's going on?" Well, the guys can perform. I said, they came to perform. They didn't come to be publicly electrocuted. I said, "Look, we're not going out there in pouring rain. That's got to be crazy with all these electric stuff. We can't do it." So, taking matters into my own hands, there was a construction site nearby, and I slipped the security guy a $50 bill or whatever it was, 50 euros at the time. I don't even know. And I rented a big construction tarp, and we went back after the rain, put it over the top, and performed the next day with the tarp. And we attached it. The building, the Bank of Ireland was landmarked. That was one of the excuses they gave for not having a roof. Oh, we don't want to damage the building. All I did was tie it around the columns, and we solved the problem. And the guys performed, and they knocked Dublin for a loop. And we got a very, very, very good reception. Well, things went on, and we tried to find a financial managing partner with deep pockets, which was going to be necessary if we wanted to promote Bagatelle in this country and raise their profile. And one of the people we spoke to was Leon Peters, who was the CEO of Cushman Wakefield, which is one of the giant commercial landlords in Manhattan, if not the biggest. And he wanted to set his son up, Paul, in the music business. So it was really nice. They were delightful people. He was a nice man. But the problem was he wanted a 51% share and not the 49% that we offered because they were music business neophytes. They didn't know anything about the music business. They had goodwill. They know they liked the music. Paul liked the music, but that's all. That deal fizzled, and Bagatelle blew up. Under low pressure, the band was like a boiler. Under low pressure, the band held together. But with advancing age and time and different pressures building up to try to make good, the band parted company. Liam went solo and asked us to stay on as managers, and he was a temperamental sort, and we handled him. He was very good as a performer, a little difficult as a person. He borrowed quite a bit of money from us and was chagrined when we insisted that he pay us back. I don't think he ever paid anybody back in his life before that, but he did. And he went back to Ireland and he formed a new group. And at my suggestion, he started re-recording the old material that he had done with Bagatelle with new arrangements. And it was very successful. He did pretty well. He also sang. I was invited over to accompany him, and he sang another composer's song called Lifeline in the Irish Eurovision Song Contest. And I remember being to seeing it performed at the King's Theatre in Dublin on national television, and it was the best, by far, the best song in the contest, but it didn't win. And that ignited a big scandal and headlines in the Irish papers the next day, talking about conspiracy theories. They said RTE, the National Irish Broadcasting Network, tanked the contest and influenced the choice for an inferior song, because if you won the Eurovision Song Contest, you had to host it. You were the nation that had to host it next year. And years before, when they were the host, they lost big money on the whole proposition, and they didn't have the money to host, and they didn't want to win. So the theory was Liam's performance and the song Lifeline went down the tubes, and another group won. I think they were called Jump the Gun, if I remember correctly. Anyway, so be it, and that was the end of that proposition. Liam struggled again, and we agreed to part company. And back in Ireland, facing reality, the guys decided to regroup. So they started again. They went on for a few years doing the same comfortable circuit all around Ireland, making good money, but never breaking through to world fame. They performed, over there, they traveled to Dubai, where they filled the stadium on St. Patrick's Day. Apparently, every year, the Irish oil field workers and a lot of others from the oil fields from all the Arab countries gather in Dubai to celebrate St. Patrick's Day, and because it's the one local country that openly permits the sale and consumption of alcohol in the Middle East. Thousands turned up, and as I said, Bagatelle performed all their Irish rock renditions of their many hits, and they filled the stadium with delighted fans. The band went on, still performing, and John and Wally, the married guys, eventually retired. Liam and Ken picked up two young men who provided the energy and vitality that was, indispensable to a successful rock band. I saw them when they came to the United States again, and they performed with the young guys in Sunnyside, Queens. They were terrific. They hadn't lost a beat. We had lots of laughs and shared a few memories without discussing what might have been. Just 2 years ago, Liam Riley died, having never attained the fame and fortune that his talents so richly warrant. Thanks for listening. Come back next week for another episode of Uncommon Law, lessons they don't teach in law school. I'm Judge Rudy Greco. Court is adjourned.